Welcome everyone. I'm Dawn with K-Square Technologies. Welcome to our monthly webinar training series. Today's session is on Microsoft Excel tips and shortcuts. We don't know what we don't know. Last summer, I had the windshield on my car replaced. And in the process, I discovered that I actually have this button I can push that will heat up the space on the windshield right along the windshield wipers. Now, for many of us in the wintertime, with snowy and icy days, that would have been really handy for me to have known about a long time ago. Now, you might be wondering, is this hidden someplace under a panel or hard to find? Unfortunately, have to confess that it was a button sitting right next to my steering wheel, but I had never noticed it before. Now, I also want to tell you, hate to admit it, but I've had this car at that point, I'd had the car for 5 years, but I had never noticed this hidden button. That can be very well your experience with Excel and other software programs. There may be features and options and shortcuts that are right in front of us, but we've never seen them before. And that's my goal in this next hour, to explore a variety of tips and shortcuts that will help you to make the most of Microsoft Excel. I want you to think for a minute and consider, how would you rate your experience in Excel? So I'll ask you in a moment about where that might be on a scale of 1 to 10. I encourage you as well to actively be involved in sharing your questions and utilize in Zoom the Q&A feature for that. We'll do our best to address that, but no, you can also follow up with us afterwards as well. And we'll just use the chat just for general communication. So take advantage of that Q&A feature in Zoom for any questions that you might have. So let's move on to your experience with Excel. If you think about yourself, your current skills, maybe you learned Excel, you took a class 10 years ago, or you're learning it on the job, you're just trying to figure it out as your projects, or maybe you spent a lot of time at the University of YouTube. So let's just take a quick poll here, and then I'll bring that up in just a moment. That is, where would you fall? Eager to learn? Maybe you really have some solid Excel skills, but you're hoping to fill in some of those gaps, perhaps in your experience. Or you're an aspiring superstar and think, well, maybe I'll pick up a tip or two. Wherever you are, you're in the right place. And let's get an idea in terms of you can let me know what that looks like. So I'm bringing up a poll and just pick from where you might land on this scale. Just take a few more seconds on that. Every answer is the right answer, wherever you are with that. Excellent. All right, I'll close the poll here in just a moment. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thanks so much for participating. And this will give you an idea here of where people that are participating in this webinar, where they feel their current experience is. So we do have an aspiring superstar, and that might be for everyone. And thank you for sharing that. My goal is, wherever you are on that level of your experience, that you will be able to pick up new skills, or maybe be be reminded of some things that you haven't used for a while, or even just keep those in mind, that is, as new projects come up in Excel. So thanks so much for participating and letting us know what your current experience is with Excel. So let's look now at where we're heading, what our game plan is for this. And we're going to look at our learning plan here. We'll explore some navigation shortcuts, data entry and editing tricks, some techniques for managing workbooks. Many of you are probably have some big workbook projects where you have multiple worksheets. How can we take advantage of those? Some tricks for customizing Excel and tips for automation. Now, I recognize that either as K-Squared technology customers or friends of the organization, that is, there's a wide range of businesses and organizations that are joining us today. So please share your questions in the Q&A. And also, you might have some specific questions that may not apply to what we're looking here, but please do follow up with us afterwards so we can find out how we can help you take advantage of your Microsoft technologies. And let's then dive in. And dive in a little slower than normal. There we go. I think we've got it now. Okay. So for those of you that might have been further down the scale of 1 to 10 on that, then keep in mind that if it's something that you've seen before, it's likely we'll be moving fairly quickly through these. So if it's something that you're familiar with, it might be something that comes up next that will be new for you. So keep that in mind and do share your questions as it's helpful for you. All right, so navigation shortcuts. Just a quick review of some things that will really help you easily navigate in Excel. If I want to move to the bottom right-hand corner of this worksheet, whether it has 100 rows or 1,000 rows, that can just be Control and the End key as an END. So Control End, and it moves to that bottom right-hand corner. Now, if this ends up moving beyond where you have data, it's a good idea then to delete any of those extra columns or rows, because at some point there might have been data there and Excel has just that memory of that. And that's why you may be getting extra pages when you preview or print or output to a PDF. Control Home takes me to the upper left-hand corner. Now, if I want to navigate in this data, and I realize that some of your worksheets are much larger, but if I want to move down this column, this is where we can use control combinations, Control and the arrow key. And so with this, I'll choose Control and the down arrow key. Takes me to the very bottom of this column. Now, if there was a blank anywhere in this data, it would stop. So you might have to press that Control and the arrow key a second time. Control up takes me not to the very top of this column because it stops where there is a blank. Now, what if this was a very wide worksheet? Certainly, if you're looking at budgets, for instance, well, Control and the right arrow key takes me to the far right-hand side, and Control left takes me just to the beginning of that row. Now, another way that we could get there would be by hitting the Home key. And so if I want, let's try that again. If I want to, let's say that I'm here in row 5 and I want to move to the beginning of that row, simply hit the Home key. So those are some of the combinations that can be helpful for you. Another way that we can quickly navigate is with a go to. Now, there's a number of different ways we can move to a location. Go to Control G, or the F5 function key is a way for you to be able to go to or specify a location. Now, what you're seeing right now are what are referred to as range names. And these are things that can be specifically built into your worksheets as a way to more easily build formulas, or as a way to go to a specific location. But in this case, all I want to do is move to a location in my worksheet, column G, row 100. So I just type in G100, hit enter or OK, and Excel takes me there, and I'm at that location. Now I can see that because Excel is highlighting those columns and those rows. So that was Control G, or the F5 function key. Now another way to do that is what's called the name box. This is in the upper left-hand corner. It is just above the first column, or column A, and I can click in there, and it's not case sensitive. And so in this case, if I wanted to put in J25, I'll simply type that and hit enter, and Excel will move to that location. So those are some navigation shortcuts, some things to keep in mind as you are moving around, so that you're not spending your whole time just scrolling or paging down, for instance. One of the other things that can be very time consuming for us is in managing workbooks. So let's look at some things that might help you more easily work with your workbooks. And I'll choose under View, I'll choose Switch Work Windows. Now, I can easily do this from my taskbar as well, but it is one way for me to be able to quickly not only see what workbooks I have open, but to be able to switch between them. Now, this is where we're going to spend some time looking at near the bottom at the sheet tabs of this workbook, and it has multiple worksheets within it. Where once again, these might be for different locations, might be for different months, different projects. And so with that, then you certainly have a situation where the being able to get to them might not be as easy, or you're spending too much time trying to click around. Now we have our directional arrows in the bottom left-hand corner, and we could use those to change our view. So certainly this is another way for us to be able to move around. And that also is a way apparently for me to inadvertently go to a different workbook. So let's switch back here. And so clicking around, but that might necessarily get us there very quickly. Here's a little trick. Move to either one of those triangles, doesn't matter which one, right click. And I'll move this just so it's a little easier to see. Here you'll see all the worksheets in this workbook. If you want to go to a specific one, you simply double click or select it and OK. And now with just a few clicks, you've been able to easily navigate to your different worksheets. And that can be a big time saver for you. You don't have to try to rearrange them. That's one of the things I see often as people rearranging them so that they can get to it more quickly. Just right click on those triangle buttons. Now, another way that you can manage your workbooks and the specific sheets within them is to right click on the sheet tabs. And this is where we have a number of different management options: inserting, deleting, renaming. And certainly these options are also available in different parts of the ribbon. You'll always find those choices, but the challenge can be that they are kind of scattered around. And so if, for instance, I simply want to create a new one, I could choose insert here. Now that might actually not be the fastest way, although it is one of my ways. If instead I'd like to insert, a couple other options is the plus that is found in our sheet tabs, just to the right side there. That is one way to be able to insert a sheet. Another keyboard shortcut for this, Shift F11. And wherever you happen to be located, that's where Excel will create a new sheet. Now, once we have that sheet, then what happens for us is that they will be numbered sheet 1, sheet 2, or whatever is available, and you can rename these. And just in chat, what's a quick way to rename a worksheet? Just pop into chat and let me know what your techniques are for renaming a worksheet. Yeah, double click. That's one of it. That's an easy way. If I simply move to that sheet, whether it's one with data or a new one, if I simply double click on this, now I can, for instance, call this November, and I can spell this out. I can use a space here and then just hit enter. Another way would be what we've in our pop-up, our shortcut, where we could rename here as well. Find just what works better for you. And you'll find that your colleagues may have a different technique, but as long as it is easy for you, then that becomes a great way to work with it. Now, if I no longer need one of these sheets, for instance, if it has data in it, and I'll just put something in so it does, then in this case, I can simply right click and choose delete. And so although that's available in the ribbon tab, in the home tab of the ribbon, then by deleting, and you will be prompted. So it's a good thing to just be watchful of that as well. Another trick that is available here is something called tab color. And if we right click, we have tab color. Now, this could just be because you want it to just like the look of it, but it also can be a way to keep organize your particular sheets. Maybe you have a different color you designate for various locations. Or if you're reviewing something, then maybe once one of those sheets is reviewed, then you color code it as green as your visual cue for that. But it is a way to be able to create some distinction between the different sheets that are available to you. So something also just to keep in mind and to leverage. We also then have, we're going to look at a couple other tricks here, copying, moving, and then I'll share with you something called grouping. And that is, if I have one of these sheets and I just want to move it, it's easy to just simply drag it left or right, and we get a little page here. So I'll go ahead and just drop that in place. Some of you may also be familiar with the fact that I can right click here and here is move or copy. So this is another way to either move or copy. And it's really helpful if we want to not only move or copy within the same workbook, but it's also a way for us to move to a different workbook or copy. I always like to choose the create a copy as a default, even if my plan is to ultimately remove or delete the worksheet from the original. So those are some options for move or copy. But here's a trick for copying within the same workbook. Although you could do it across workbooks, it's probably handier to use the move or copy. And that is, remember the drag. And so for this, I have my South sheet. Let's look at that one. And I want to create a copy of it that maybe is for the next month. Maybe it's for another location. Maybe this is a master. Instead of just dragging it, I'm going to hold down the control key and then drag. And now look at my mouse. It has a plus on it. And now I'll simply drop this in place. I let go of my mouse first and then let go of the control. And I have a perfect copy. So for any of you, you don't have to confess, but for anyone who has done instead a copy and paste, Now you can stop it immediately. That is because if we copy and paste into another sheet, you do not have an exact copy. You're spending way too much time not trying to reformat that. But with this trick, or you could use the move or copy, you get an exact copy. Now there isn't any linking that takes place with this, but we do not need to make any fixes to the formatting. Simply update the content as that might make sense for you. And for this one, then I could double click on this, and maybe I want this to be and I could then have this be another sheet that would help me. There's another option that we have, and this is something called grouping. And then we'll move in and we'll look at some data entry tricks and some formatting tricks, customization and automation. So grouping could be a huge time saver for you. Think about those projects, those workbooks that have multiple worksheets in them. With those, have you run into a situation where you move to the first one and now maybe you make it landscape, you change the margins, you put in that footer that you need for your organization, and now you move to the next one and you repeat those steps, and the next one and you repeat those steps? With grouping, we can do it one time. So here's how this works. First of all, I'll go ahead and I'll move some of my sheets out of the way here. Grouping is a way to be able to apply multiple features, multiple changes to one or more sheets. And in this case, how we do that. I'll click on the first one here of what I want to have a group, which is East. One way is I'll hold down Shift and click on the last of the group. And you may know this then from, this might seem familiar to you from Windows Explorer where you're selecting. So now you can kind of see they're lit up. They have kind of white tabs and they have been grouped. Look up in the title bar and here we see group. So what are we going to do with this? Well, know that the upside and the downside is whatever you do to that group applies to all of them. So these particular ones all have a similar look to them. They all have the same type of headings. So it might be something we could do, like changing those headings or formatting that would apply. So it's going to apply to everything that's selected. Or this is where we could change our orientation. Before we do that, if I want to ungroup, I'll just click on another sheet. So another way to group would be to select whatever you want as part of that group and hold down the Control key. And with the Control, then we're able to select things that aren't contiguous or aren't adjacent to each other. Once again, when it's grouped, whatever you do in terms of formatting, data changes, formulas, anything like that applies to that group of worksheets. So it has a big upside, but you do need to make sure that you don't group before you go on to your next meeting, for instance, and forget that they're grouped. Grouping is also helpful for printing. I'll select the first one this time. Now, if I want to ungroup, once again, another way I could right click, and here is ungroup. If I wanted to select all of them, then I have select all sheets. So I'll ungroup the sheets, pick the first one, and then just select these 4. So a few changes I'll quickly make here, then we'll move into some of our other shortcuts and tips. First, I'd like to simply change this label here. And I'll spell this out. So a couple of things. Maybe I see, oh, that should really have wrap text. I'll select the entire row and know that I'm selecting this for all 4 of those. Wrap text. And I want that column to be a little bit wider then, so I'll double click. Well, that would be too wide. So instead, I'll drag this to make it approximately the width I want, and I'm changing all of them. Just to make this stand out a little bit more, just for the grouping example, I'll change that to bold and change the fill, so we'll make that a little wider. So we've applied some of those changes, but I also will let's go to page layout, and here I'll change this so that it's landscape. And that is applying to all 4 of these selected or grouped worksheets. And then if there was other things that I want to change, for instance, I want to put in a header or footer here, I'll just say that I want that the width, to scale it so that they all fit on 1 page wide. Let's take a minute here to look at this. If when I go to print, and this could be to output to a PDF just as well as to a physical print, there's a couple things that are happening here. First of all, because they're grouped, these are considered to be the active sheets. So they would all then be in a batch together. Notice as well, as I look at each one of them, that these are all going to be showing those same changes. So print active sheets is applying to all of those selected rather than just one sheet. If I come back out of this, now I will ungroup, and I can simply do that by selecting or clicking on a different one. And what I'd like you to see here is this time I'll go back into print. I'm using Control P for that. That launches my print preview. And now I'm only looking at this one sheet, but if I say print the entire workbook, then as I look at these particular sheets, then what's happening is that now we won't look at every single one of them, so not to be concerned. But I have then what my landscape sheets, and Excel is deciding to be a little bit stubborn here, so we'll see how this continues. So those are landscape, and as I move through those, then I will get to and see the others that are formatted as portrait, and that then changes I'm just crossing my fingers now here as Excel is being a little bit temperamental. There we go. So it's just simply then that with those changes only applied to that particular one, or the whatever we had selected. And we'll go ahead and move out of this. So we've looked at grouping, we've looked at some navigation shortcuts for you. We're going to explore some editing and formatting shortcuts. What have you seen in chat? What have you seen so far that is a new tip for you or something that you will start to apply? Have you seen anything that's new or a great tip? Just share that in chat. Let us know what has been helpful for you. Grouping, yeah, that's a really popular, that's a huge time saver. Grouping is new, and even if it's something you might not be able to be using immediately, just think about those times when you're applying something to a change to more than one. Excellent. And you're welcome to also just send me messages privately as well if you'd rather not hop into the chat for that. Yeah. And I even see someone's saying just some of the navigation. There's just a good reminder. So let's look at some of those data entry tips here and some other options as well. So we're just shifting once again. When we're looking at keyboard shortcuts here for these, let's say we want to put in the current time. Well, that is Control and the semicolon. That will capture the current time, and it is not a formula or a function. It just is a way to bring that in very quickly. If you want the time, that is Control and the colon. And that, once again, this is not dynamic. It is just capturing it. So when you need to have a quick timestamp for maybe when something has been received or processed, then this can be a quick way to do that. Control and the semicolon for the date, Control colon for the time. Now, although these are very simple entries, if I wanted to duplicate rather than having to type it again, this is where we can do Control D for duplicate. And that can be, think about those really big worksheets where you have lots of data, maybe a formula or a comment or a note. So Control D, or you can use Control and the single quote, whatever helps you, but it is a way to duplicate from the cell right above. So another shortcut that might be helpful for you. If I'm just immediately to the right here, I can do Control R, and that is a way to fill to the right. And that is another possible shortcut that might be helpful for you. Anytime you want to be able to quickly edit, you can hit your F2 function key or double click into the cell. And this gives you what's called in-place editing. You're in the cell. You can also go up to the formula bar. It's just picking whatever works best for you. Many of you are probably familiar with what is called the autofill feature, but I want to just touch on a few things that might be new or make this easier for you. And this means that we have data, a formula, something that we want to duplicate. We can then look for this fill handle in the bottom right-hand corner and look for the cross and either drag it down or drag it to the right. Now, in this case, I'm just getting a regular series. I'll Control Z or undo. But here, what if I want to have this be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Another way to do that, I can either drag with my left and then look for a pop-up, or I can press down my drag with my right mouse button. Just depends upon if that's something you're comfortable with. And here is fill series. So that is another way to be able to create that series rather than typing those in. Now here, for instance, if I just want to see a whole bunch of occurrences of the same entry, I'm going to go to that little corner here and double click. So now that is matching. So it's even faster than dragging it down. It's matching what is to the left. So think about a situation where you might have a total of formula like a sum, and you want to copy it down what maybe is hundreds of rows. Just move to that corner and double click. And what a huge time saver that could be. It only stops if there happens to be a blank cell. Now, since we're here, if I wanted to have a quick total as well, a keyboard shortcut for sum is Alt equals. And by typing Alt equals, it's equivalent to hitting the auto sum key or typing out that formula. So that is another quick, easy way for you. So that double click. Also, just as you've likely seen this, but if you're wanting to build budgets, certainly we can drag across as well. I could double click, but if I drag down, Excel has a series. That is, it knows the days of the week and the months, either abbreviated or spelled out, and it will automatically create that series for us. It's also possible for you to create your own custom fill. So if you are managing 3 different offices or 6 different product lines or something along those lines, you could build those in so that when you autofill, it automatically works for you. So here's then just another option. If I drag this down, or I'll double click, what I get, because it's a date, Excel assumes it's an automatic series. So instead, if that's not what I want, I'll look for this fill handle, and you always have this as an option. And I could either say copy cells if I want copies of just this, or maybe I just want to fill weekdays. So that becomes then just, there's multiple options when you're working with the dates. Like, hopefully that gives you some choices in terms of how you can then leverage or some of the shortcuts that are available to you. Another possibility is when you're getting data from another source. And this is something called Transpose. And if I want to flip it, that is, maybe it comes in so that whatever I have on the left-hand side, I'd really like to have at the top. So whatever that looks like here, again, we don't have to recreate that. I'll simply select it first of all, and I'll do that with a Control A. So Control A is a keyboard shortcut to select the active range. If you press Control A again, it will do the entire workbook, worksheet. So here, just Control A. I'll copy. I'll use keyboard shortcut Control C, but you can right click or use whatever works for you. And I want to transpose or flip this, and I'll just move to a different location so you can see this. Although we could find this under the Home tab, I'll right click, and we have some options here for pasting. Here is Transpose. So we can hover over that to see what will happen and see how this flips your data. Once again, it might be a way for you to save time or make it easier for you to work with the data that you have. So how can we make these things just much easier for us as we're working with Excel, so you can focus on what is maybe a lot more important to you? There are a couple other editing and formatting shortcuts, and then we'll look at some customization and automation as we continue here. So just a quick check-in. Questions or anything else that you're seeing? That is, how can we help you? What are you curious about? And anything you'd like to have clarified? If it's a specific question just for us, and you feel free to drop that into the Q&A portion or share in chat. So let us know. What have you seen that would be helpful? Let's try some formatting options then. Here, for instance, if I have this formatted, and I'll just change this in a way and say, maybe that's what I like. Now, of course, if I was planning ahead, I could have selected all of that at the same time. But if you have something that's formatted and you want to duplicate that formatting, whatever that might be, then try the Format Painter. And if you haven't used this before, you'll find it under the Home tab. And here we have Format Painter, this paintbrush. And so you first of all select what the good stuff is, and then I'll select Format Painter. And then I can simply click and drag, or simply say, I'd like this to look exactly the same as this other one. So it's just duplicating the formatting. That's a lot easier than going up to the ribbon to try to figure out what the color was, what the size is, whatever that might be. Now, another way for us to do that, I'll undo for a moment, is what if we want to format in a number of different places. Well, I could then, once again, go to the Format Painter and double click. Now what this does, it changes my mouse. I double click to a little paintbrush, but I could click in one place, but I could also click and drag. It basically keeps it in place until you're done. That is, if you want to change whatever you want to do with it, and I could click and click and click. So I can either escape or click on that Format Painter again, but that can be a quick way for you to duplicate or work with your data. And anytime you want to go into the Format dialog box, that is Control-1. That is a quick keyboard shortcut as well, in case you'd rather just focus through the dialog box versus working from the ribbon. It's all about finding out what works best for you. Let's look at some other formatting that might be just really handy or could be a huge time saver for you. And let's go ahead here. I will move just to my back to that list of data here. And just in chat, how many of you have worked with flash fill? Just give me a yes or no in the chat. Let me know if that is something that is familiar to you. Yes or no. Excellent. Okay. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate that. Flash fill. Okay. Some of you are familiar with it. Excellent. And as I said, if it's something you've seen, there's probably going to be something new coming along. Here's the idea of flash fill. When you have data, it's possible you'd like to reconfigure it. Maybe we want just the last name of the supervisor to be pulled out, or maybe we want to combine the first name and the last name. Those are things we can certainly do with text functions, but with flash fill, we might be able to solve that without having to build in any kind of involved formula. Here's basically how this works. So if I want to, I'll just come in here and create and I'll use my Format Painter to make that look so much prettier and so much nicer. But I want to be able to display the last name of the supervisor. So to do that, I'm going to type in, here's that first one. Now, this is where we have the virtual drum roll. I start typing the next one. Look what happens. Flash fill. It isn't something you have to turn on. It isn't something you have to do anything special for. It's just artificial intelligence where Excel is recognizing a pattern. If you don't want it, you keep typing. If you want it, just hit enter. And now you've been able to extract that. It's not a formula. There isn't anything else you have to do. And it is a very quick, easy way for us to be able to pull out or get a different pattern for our data. And that can be really helpful, especially if your data doesn't look exactly like what you might want it to be. We'll try one more example here, and then we'll shift into some other shortcuts for you. In this case, let's say I want to see the last name and the first name together. And so I will type in the pattern. I just want to see first name and the last name all in one. Look what happens as I start typing again. Excel recognizes the pattern and I can hit enter. So how much time could that save you versus retyping or having to come up with a concat function, for instance, or other functions? If you see anything in the pattern that doesn't quite work, that is someone may have a middle initial or multiple names, then you can move to that location and recreate it. And that usually is all you have to do. And your flash fill is also, you can trigger it if it doesn't seem to be, kicking in. You can find it under the fill in the home tab, and then here is flash fill, and Control E is the shortcut. So it's just usually triggered by having one or two examples that teach Excel what the pattern is. And that's the idea of flash fill. Here again, for fast data entry for you and some easy ways for you to work with it. Another way that we can save time with editing is by just leveraging what we have available to us in terms of find and replace. So find is Control F, replace is Control H. And let's say it was a find and replace. Perhaps what I want to do is I want to find all the occurrences of admin and replace it with administration. Now, in this case, I could get specific and just highlight the column F if that was really the only one I wanted to change. But before we, one of the challenges we can have with find and replace is you don't want to necessarily, unless if you can avoid it, have to say find next, find next, find next. So here we have a find all. Explore this, because what it will do is it can give you more confidence to do a replace all if you can see what met the pattern, what it's looking at. And in this case, we may not want to have the position or the role be changed, only those things that are in that department. But these are also hyperlinks, which means we could go to that specific one if we wanted to see it. So think of all those category codes and project codes and things like that. Well, I'll go to options here. And what I like to do is say match entire cell contents. Now I'll find all, and this will give me more confidence that it's really focusing just on a specific one, and I can more confidently replace all. So the idea with that is to leverage that find all so that you can more easily work with it. The find also has the ability for you to find formatting, and that is something that you may not have worked with before. That is, you can actually have Excel find. So if maybe a colleague went in and formatted things in a specific way, then you want to change it, then you can actually, whether or not you're looking for content here, you can actually have it find that specific format and replace it with something if you want. So hopefully that gives you some other options that you can try. Now, when you're working with formatting, another choice is conditional formatting. And this is a way, as the name implies, for us to be able to automatically apply formatting. Think about those projects that you have. Perhaps it's a situation where you're reviewing it and manually formatting it. That's where conditional formatting can be really helpful. And this can be fairly elaborate if you want. It doesn't have to be. Here, I just like to have it automatically show me when this value is greater than 40, whether or not it's from a direct entry or a formula. From the Home tab, I'll go to conditional formatting here. And there's a lot of rules we can build into, but just as a quick example, I'll say it's greater than, and anything that's greater than 40. So if you're looking for different tolerances, things that are too high, too low, here you can go in and create your own custom format. I'll just build one of the ones that is an option here and go ahead and okay. So now for every cell that's greater than 40, it automatically formats it. If this data changes and this becomes a higher number, then what'll happen here is that it will then change it. Now, if one of these other values is lower, then conditional formatting plays into that as well. So try that as a way for you to be able to visually apply, but not have to have it be something you do manually. Very quickly, we have another option under conditional formatting, and that is where we can also display different icon sets, color scales, data bars. So something like the markup, it's going to be based upon whatever the highest and lowest values are there to show you those kinds of things. Or icon sets like the arrows based upon, once again, whatever the highest or lowest are. If you've done conditional formatting or if this is something new for you, either way, under the dropdown, you also have manage rules. And this gives you the option to be able to edit those rules, delete them, and otherwise make changes to them. So explore that to see how this might be helpful for you and some of the things that you can do there. We have a couple other things that we're going to explore, and that includes then how can we customize Excel and some automation shortcuts. And then we'll be wrapping up. So quick check-in here before we move to those. Is there anything that you have questions about you'd like to see some more of? What would be useful for you? Let me know in chat. If it's a specific question, feel free to use the Q&A for that. How can we be of help to you? I hope this means you're just absolutely enthralled. Most importantly, that there are many or even just a few shortcuts, tips, some things that will help you to leverage Excel. So let's wrap up then with some customization and some automation. Absolutely, that's fair enough. I think I need to work with it to have more questions. And you'll just discover as some of these unfold. So I appreciate the honesty, and that's absolutely this. We're here to help you. So customizing. How many of you have worked with the quick access toolbar? So that's sitting about, so yes or no in the chat. This is sitting above our ribbon right now. I'll show you a few things. Yes. Now, if you've all say yes, then we'll move on to something else. Never used. Okay. Let me give you the quick, 2-minute, 3-minute tour of what you could do here, because the quick access toolbar is a huge time saver for you. And it's available in all your Office 365 and earlier programs. It sits above the ribbon by default and just has a few things like save, undo, and redo. So there's 3 different ways we can customize this. I'll come to this drop down here, and you'll see some file management things like new, open, print preview, and so on. The check mark indicates whatever happens to be currently selected. Now, a second way for us to be able to work with this quick access toolbar to add tools, because not everything is in that dropdown, would be to go to that tool like wrap text. Maybe that's something you use frequently for headings, and right click and left click on add to quick access toolbar. So that becomes another option. Think about your auto sum. Now we could just hover over the auto sum, which is also in the home tab, or I could go to that arrow. And so if you do work with some of those other functions like average, count, etc., then you would have the option to be able to add those as well. So it's just a little subtlety. And if I come to then the arrow, right click, here is add to quick access toolbar. So now I have my auto sum, but I'm running into a little problem in that this quick access toolbar can easily take over my title bar. And there's a lot of other things going on here. The name of my workbook, search, and other Windows management tools, things like that. So come back to this drop-down arrow here, and I'm going to choose Show Below the Ribbon. And you'll likely find this to be much easier. The Quick Access Toolbar can sit above or below the ribbon, and know that it's not workbook specific. So when you exit out of Excel and come back, it'll still be here. So it's worth putting some time into that. And now I have those tools that are available. And the nice thing is that I think they're more visual, but they can also, we can add a lot more than what would easily fit at the top. The third way, and this is just a quick visit here, but if we go to the drop-down arrow and pick more commands, this takes us to a dialog box where we can rearrange those tools, and we can add others as well. These have a lot of different categories, so certainly you can explore that. But under popular commands, for instance, one of the ones that's commonly used is Save As. So I'll choose my Save As here and add it. And now I'd like to have these be a little bit more logical. So with that tool selected, I'll right click and move it over by my save options. Maybe I want my file management like new and open to be at the beginning. And I'm simply selecting it and using the up and down tools so that it's in the position I like. And you can continue adding tools directly from the ribbon or from this customize area. When you're done and you're happy with that, you can choose OK. But now you have a place where you can put those tools that you use frequently without constantly having to shift to a different ribbon or otherwise working with it. So let's look at two other quick automation tools, and then we'll wrap up for today. And one of those is something that you probably have seen. It's a situation where it's a nice feature. It's called Autocomplete. And you could start typing in, let's just say that this is something that's at Linda's office. And if I start typing, then based upon what's already in that column, Excel will automatically populate. That is, we could just keep typing if it's something different. If I want this answer, I'll go ahead and hit enter. But sometimes we run into something that's more challenging. That is, we have multiple conference rooms. And unless I just type like conference room and type to the very end, that's not really going to save me a whole lot of time. So here's the quick trick to leverage that autocomplete. And that is, you're on the cell, Alt, and the down arrow key. And now I get a list of everything that's in that column, and I can simply pick the one that I want, Alt and the down arrow key. Another way to do that is to right click, and then there's an option near the bottom called Pick from Drop-Down List. And that will open up the list as well. So finding however you can quickly leverage the autocomplete or automated feature there. And the last easy, just quick little trick is something that's called Autocalculate. And this can also be helpful when you already have formulas here. But if I have these range of cells highlighted, look in your status bar, and you will see that Excel is telling you based upon the selection, what is the average, what is the count, what is the sum, and if we want to just quickly review that without having to build formulas, then this is a way for us to know how many do I have, how is that set up. So those are just some quick things to be familiar with and to work with. The idea is, how can we really find those tools that will save us time in Excel? And I hope that you have seen at least a few. And if you will, please share in chat from what you've seen, keyboard shortcuts, different techniques, things like flash fill, quick access toolbar. If you would please just share what you will be able to start to use. What have you seen that will help you to be more productive? Just remember grouping. That was something that we saw, some of the workbook management. Share that in chat. Let us know. The autocomplete dropdown. Yeah, the autofill, customizing the toolbar. Yeah, I love that autocomplete dropdown instead of trying to just keep typing and typing. Yeah, the quick access toolbar, big time saver, and you can do those things. Alt equals, that's a handy one for some and a few others. Awesome. Wow, you got to have a list, Tammy. That's fantastic. Flash fill, conditional formatting, quick access, so many great things. Oh, I'm glad that's helpful for you. All the shortcut commands using control. Yeah, the navigation shortcuts, how so much easier for that. And the question is there recording? Yes, this is being recorded and you'll have the opportunity to, that link will be sent to you because you're registered for this session. And so thank you for asking about that. And I appreciate then, knowing that you have picked up some of those hidden shortcuts, maybe those hidden buttons, because we don't know, right? Thank you so much for joining us. Our next webinar is on Outlook. That will be next month. These are scheduled for the second Tuesday of each month. And there will be a survey. So when you leave, when we wrap up, please do answer that survey to let us know what topics would be helpful for you, you'd like to learn more about. And, if you have some suggestions for how we can make this an even better learning experience for you. But we will start announcing then other webinars as they're coming up. So please do just let us know just for a couple minutes about how we can really be of help to you, what would be useful for you. And how can we help you to be more productive? Let us know. Please reach out to us for your questions, for your IT services and consulting, help you support with Microsoft technologies. Let us know what learning, what training would be helpful for you in the future. And we so thank you for being here. Thanks for joining us.